Welcome to our weekly Friday Talk and Tour series when we share the opportunity to visit the studios of our wonderful artists and hear about their works and inspiration. These visits are brought to you by the Duncan McClellan Gallery and the DMG School Project of St. Petersburg, Florida. Thank you for joining us.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Happy Pesach, happy Easter, and happy Friday. It's good to see all of you, and thanks for coming in today. We have an exciting show with Pavel Novak, and I think you'll really appreciate and get to know a bit more of the cold working process. Plus, you'll find him very entertaining. And his work is absolutely beautiful. We've got a busy weekend here. We have Deanna Clayton doing a master class. We have our class filled. And over the next 2 days, they're going to be making bowls on a pâte à verre technique. Also, the team this week completed some new videos that have been uploaded to our website, but it's actually for teachers to download and to use for teaching their students. Teaching things like states of matter, gravity. So I think you'll, if you have grandkids that are in the early stages, that would be a great thing to stick them in front of, and then you got 5 minutes that you've tied them up and they're very enthralled. So anyway, good to see you all. Thank you for being here, and take it away, Mary.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks, everyone, for being here. And thanks especially to Pavel Novak, who's joining us today. We've been admiring his work for so long and are so fortunate to have him join us as a member of the gallery family. We're going to see many pieces. Pavel's going to explain somewhat. He's not going to give away his secrets, but he's going to talk about, all the really hard work and incredible inspiration and expertise it takes to create these beautiful works. So again, thank you for being here. To see Pavel best, put your view choice as speaker view. Choose speaker view. It's usually up in the right-hand corner of your screen. And also mute yourself, but enter questions and comments in your chat button. As we see them and as appropriate, we'll address them to Pavel, and you'll have a chance to talk to him towards the end of the presentation as well. So thank you, and we're going to introduce Pavel to say hello and share his presentation with you.
Hello, should we share right now?
Sure. Yeah. Why don't you say hi and go
Hello,
ahead.
Everybody. I would like to thank Duncan and everybody who works for his gallery for this opportunity. And I'm excited to show you my work and tell you a little bit about my life and my journey, how I ended up from the Czech Republic here in the United States. So, Mary, can you help me with the?
Sure. You want to go to share your slideshow
from the beginning.
From the beginning, right?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
So it's on the left, right there.
Yep.
Okay.
I lost them.
Oh.
No, I'm still here.
Here you go.
Okay. So can you guys see it? I just want to double check.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So my name is Pavel. I am originally from Czechoslovakia, and I grew up in a little town called Česká Lípa, which is about 50 miles north of Prague. This is the house where I grew up. My parents still live there today. The town is pretty small. The population is about 35,000 people. And so I include a couple images from that. I went to school at Novi Bor, the glass school, which is about 5 miles north from where I grew up. The schooling system in Europe is different. I was basically introduced to glass and started grinding glass at the age of 14. I spent 4.5 years being trained as a cold worker. And during that time, I was sponsored by a company called Crystalex. This is my very first piece I make when I was 15 years old. The size, what you see on the screen, is pretty much the real size. It was less than 3 inches big. And so that was my first piece, which I was able to finish completely without any accidents. I gave it to my parents, and they hold on to it. This is the company I mentioned, Crystalex. After finishing and getting my degree, I spent, originally I was scheduled to work for them for 2 years, but it only, if I remember correctly, I spent 6 months working for them. And then I got the offer to go back into the school and being assistant teacher. And then I skip about a year and a half, and I become a teacher of cold working at the same school, which where I got my education. I probably should wait a little bit with the next picture, because now there's the point how I ended up in the United States as a teacher. I had 2.5 months vacation, and at 1995, I was approached by wife of Michael Pavlik. Some of you probably know the name. He's a glass artist based in Massachusetts, and his wife, Vladimira Klumpar, approached me at Novi Bor, and she was looking for somebody who would help them with the cold working process. And at spring 1996, I went to United States for a first time. This is my second evening in America. I'm the guy on the right, was 21 years old. That guy next to me is Martin Rossol. You probably know this guy. He is a cold worker as well. And Martin was the guy who picked me up at the airport, and we worked together for many years. We became very good friends. And he ended up being a best man on my wedding. Next to the Martin is his wife, Hannah. So yeah, this is roughly 27 years ago. This is us now. You can see that we look pretty much the same. Not really, but I spent a lot of time with Martin. We taught a bunch of classes together, and throughout the talk, I'm gonna come back to it on at least one more occasion. So I do not have many pictures from my humble beginnings, but this is basically from those years working for Michael Pavlik, and this is the type of work what we were doing. I spent 4 seasons working for Michael, and then I started working for his neighbor, Josh Simpson, who lives literally half a mile from his house. This is Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts. Josh Simpson is known for making planets. And this happened to be one of the last projects I was part of. Josh was approached by Corning Museum of Glass. They have a giant collection of paperweights, and they were closing on number 10,000, and they asked him to make the biggest paperweight possible. So this piece was about 107, 109 pounds big. And so when it was finished, I grind and polish bottom. It was one of the heaviest pieces I ever worked on. After 4 years working for Josh, I relocated to my current location, which is Collingswood, New Jersey. That's about 10 minutes southeast from Philadelphia. So what I do is cold working, which means I am using diamond wheels, stone wheels, and basically everything starts on the diamond saw where I cut, and then I grind, facet, and polish glass. So I will turn this into the stages. I'm not gonna go through the entire process at once, but we're gonna be in and out, and I will show you the part of the process, part of the studio. So on that first image, I was cutting a piece of glass. This is a 30-inch cast iron, and I'm using a different grades of silicon carbides for grinding and pre-polishing. And this is the final stage. For a polishing, I am using 2 different pumices, and the last step is a cerium oxide with the felt wheel, and that's actually what you see on the pictures. So now we're getting to the hopefully the more interesting part. This is my works, and this is one of my first pieces. I happen to work with a optical glass, which is always clear. It's non-leaded, and it's very close to the BK7, and it's very important for me. This material, what I'm getting, is completely bubble-free. So this piece has, if you see that red dot, that's my little laser pointer. In the beginning, I was achieving the color by the airbrushing little particles of glass on the finished surface, and later on I put it into the kiln and I fire it. So this uranium green and this blue is essentially liquid glass, which is airbrushed on the piece, and then I put it in the kiln, heat it up between 600 to 700 Fahrenheit, and the color actually melts in. So I usually try to stick to the 1, sometimes 2 colors, but this technique worked nicely, and I was doing it for a couple of years. The problem with it is that the color application is always the last thing. And so I had a finished piece with the color, and then I put it in the kiln, and the computer is very sensitive to the weather conditions. So if there was a thunderstorm in the 2-3 miles radius, I had to happen that it affect my computer, and instead of holding the temperature on 600 degrees Fahrenheit, it actually went to the maximum, which was 24 degrees, 2400 degrees Fahrenheit, and I had, I believe, 2 or 3 pieces completely melted. And so after a couple of years, I was looking for a different ways how I can introduce the color. Next logical step was use the colored glass, and that's what I did here. So what you see here is essentially cube, which I cut the facet on the back. Where the pointer is, this is actually the only place where the color is. And right here, this is a reflection. This was one of the largest pieces, larger pieces. This was about 8 by 8 inches, and the weight was about 41 pounds, 42. I was lucky enough that this piece ended up in the Liberty Museum in Philadelphia. And right after that, I ended up in the hospital having a hernia surgery. So there was kind of a part of what I do for a living, because all the pieces of glass are solid and they are quite heavy. And so this is my only income. I do glass full-time for a living. After I was back from the hospital, I tried to think about what can I be doing differently. And before I gave my body chance to heal, I actually spent a lot of months, about 15, 16 months, to experiment and try to do cold work jewelry. So this is exactly the same technique what I just described. When I grind polished glass, I airbrush the color, and then it's all attached to the sterling silver. So it's essentially sculptures on the smaller scale. This started as a kind of as an innocent experiment, but I did this for about 4.5 years. I split the time kind of 50-50, meaning when I went to the studio in the morning, I started working on the heavy stuff for 4 or 5 hours. And then when my body get tired, I switch, and I was working on these pieces. These 2 specific pieces you see on the screen, they ended up in the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. And then I switched to the black glass, which I combine with either gold, or in some cases, I was adding even little diamonds. This is the last piece of jewelry I'm showing. This piece ended up in the Baccarat Museum of Glass in France. I had a show there at 2013, which was a huge privilege, because it was one of those things they approached me out of the blue. So getting 2 pieces into that museum really meant a lot to me. But I remember the show for a little different reason. A year before this, that means 2012, I became a citizen. And I remember getting a poster from Baccarat. And it was the very first time when I saw my name, Pavel Novak /USA. So that's the main reason why I remember the show. And I always will. So that was special. So after this, I got better. And I started working again on larger scale work. I want to talk just very briefly about how I'm approaching the glass. I mean, to me, the priority is always the optics, what is happening inside. I can zoom in here. And so I consider glass, it's one of the few materials which is four-dimensional, because obviously you have the 3D, but you can also look inside. And so I always was very interested about how the reflections work, and basically trying to create different 3D images. So basically that pyramid on the inside is non-existing. It's essentially, I cut a corner off that's create a triangle, and I laminate the black glass on the back. So this triangle, if all the angles are correct, will create this pyramid. This is a combination of the airbrushing color and 23 karat gold. That Adam-looking symbol is created by only 3 lines. There are channels on the back about 3 millimeters deep. I'm gonna try to trace them. So I have 1, 2, and the third one. So I have 3 quarter circles. And what's happening, they reflect from the side, and this is what creates this Adam-looking symbol. And this is also a good example that the piece doesn't need to be too colorful, I think, to be interesting, because essentially I have only 2 stripes, but when you look inside, it reflects multiple times. So this is something a little more organic piece, that not everything needs to be straight and geometric. So I have several slides which explain that you can do curve side and kind of like a twist the piece. So it's fair to say that everything what I do starts as a block. And so this piece I cut into the 3 individual sections, and then I laminate using a colored epoxy. So it's epoxy which I mix with color pigment. So I'm able to achieve, like in this specific case, I did yellow epoxy here and blue epoxy here. I have the eye shape on the top, and then I have exactly the same design on the bottom, except this point goes here. That's why I have this line. So all the glass you see right here needs to be removed. So I will take this piece, I put it into the diamond saw, and try to cut it as close to the lines and as possible on the both sides. Then I go on the flat 30-inch wheel, and I have to basically round this and try to trace it as close. So this line and this line is pretty much my guide. So this side is done. I still have to duplicate the same thing on the other side. And then I go on the 5 different wheels, and I go from very rough texture to the complete polish. And this is basically the finished piece, which you just saw. So there's a blue and yellow lamination. The green is not really in the piece. It's just when the light goes through these 2 colors, it gives me extra color of green. So you saw the piece before I start grinding. So those laminations are perfectly flat, but because this is in the curved surface, there's this optical illusion that it creates almost like a ribbon effect, that the color is twisted, but it's certainly not the case. This is back to Martin. I was lucky enough to do a demo with him about 4 or 5 years ago in Corning, New York, during the gas conference. This is us that year. I spent about 10, 11 years going to Corning every winter and summer, doing 2 or 3 weeks long classes with Martin. It was a lot of fun. I still teach, not as intensively. I would say every 2 years I go. I try to stay locally. I teach in Glass Underground, which is a studio here in New Jersey. I go to Pittsburgh Glass Center, and that's about it. Now we're getting to the point because until this point, I try to keep pieces relatively simple, at least in terms of colors. I never went past 2, but I tried to see if I can somehow introduce more colors without making it too busy. This is actually the same piece. I originally meant this piece like that, and then my photographer decided to flip it this way, and I didn't like it at all. But this has happened to be one of the most used image of my work, which is tell you how much I know about the photography, which is none. So I just thought it was funny that I really didn't intend it this way.
Pavel, I just want to interrupt and say that's one of the wonderful things about your work is when you see it from many, many different angles, from each angle has a totally different personality and presentation. So it's almost as if you have 4 different pieces when you have a piece of your work.
It's kind of a part of what I struggle, because when the gallery asked me, send me the images you like, the thing about the optical glass, and I will show you example, because I have a couple pieces from a very different angles that sometimes you just step to the side and from a few inches and you're going to have a completely different view that it doesn't look even like the same piece. This is from the series called Trigons. These are 2 3-sides pyramid. The glass is completely clear and the color is sandwiched right between, right here. What I did differently here is I essentially put a red epoxy in one corner and yellow epoxy in the top, and then laminate them together and let the color meet roughly in the center. So you can see from this angle that I'm losing the color here. So when you walk around the piece, in certain angles, you see mostly clear, but when you were standing in front of it, it just picks up the whole thing. I did only about 4 pieces like this. I did this on the largest scale. It was about a 6 by 13 inches. And even though that this was popular and people liked it, like I said, it only 4 pieces because there was a very difficult moment how to control the epoxy. I use a red and blue, and that's what gives me that purple tint in the center. The difficult part is I need to put exactly the same amount of epoxy on the both sides. If I don't do that, the epoxy will push the other color, and I would have the purple, like, let's say somewhere here, and I didn't want it. So I, on certain occasions, did the lamination 2 or 3 times, and I basically got into the point with which I genuinely hate, which is a happy accident. When I'm making my work, I need to feel that I am in charge, and it's gonna end up exactly the way it's intended. And also, I need to know that I am able to duplicate my design, which was certainly not the case with these pieces. So like I said, I do like the final sculpture, but that little bit of luck was always involved. So I try to move from that. So I go from extremely colorful pieces back to color with almost no with pieces with almost no color. You see that I'm trying not to get stuck to the one theme and try to experiment. So this piece is a combination basically of that atom looking symbol, which I used previously, but I add more gold. I sandblast 3 lines like a triangle on the back, and it create this 4-side pyramid on the inside. This is the only time I actually use dichroic glass. When I was very young, I used to make pieces with the dichroic, which I didn't even photograph. Those pieces were quite small, but I felt like I'm gonna go back in time and I make the dichroic glass is a very thin sheet of glass which is laminated right on the bottom. It's the color which it's the glass which actually changed the color, depends on the angle, and that's what creates this rainbow effect. I call this piece hologram. And This piece I basically make for myself, essentially, even though that I no longer have it, but I felt like it was kind of the step backwards. I didn't choose to use more because there are already much more established people who using dichroic glass for their work, and so I stick to basically what I was doing previously. This is my very first piece, which I introduce all three techniques I was talking about so far, which means there is a black glass on the back, there is a color lamination in the center, and gold, which is sandblasted and then apply on the bottom. This is the second largest piece to the date. Again, it's all solid. I think it was 6 by 8.5, and I think it was like 13 inches tall. I don't remember measurements, but I do remember how heavy it was. That certainly was the case. This piece has a home actually in Boynton Beach. I do have a image of how it looks on the display in the collection of Arthur Sherman.
Pavel, we
This
do
is
have a question about when the epoxy is applied. Do you fire it again? Do you refire?
no. The epoxy is without. It doesn't need any firing. If I simplify it, there is essentially a clear epoxy I'm using, and I mix color powder in it. About 80% of that powder will dissolve, and then I need to run it through the filter to get all the little particles out. And then I will mix it with a clear epoxy and do the lamination, and it takes about 3 days to cure. So I think it's really fair to say that it's a colored glue. And so there's no firing, it just needs the couple of days to cure.
Thank you.
I am gonna actually have better images through the process to show. So this was my first piece, which this series I call Tesseract. Find a fancy word, which is essentially cube inside of the cube. This piece for me was impossible to make from a one piece, so there are essentially two pieces which I finished individually, and this cube is at later on, and I tried to match these corners as best as I could. This piece ended up in the Highland Park Hospital in Chicago in the lobby, which was a little unusual, but I guess the way I'm looking at it, people don't want to go to the hospital in the first place. So maybe if you go into the lobby, you see something like that, maybe it will bring the smile to your face. This is how I work. This was the same piece. I finish the bigger piece first, and then I'm sure there is a mathematician who can take a diameter of this triangle and figure it out the exact size of that cube which goes on the top, but I am definitely not one of those people. So what I ended up doing is I was working on that smaller cube, and I was going back and forth until these corners perfectly fit, and then I laminate it and polish it, and then I laminate it, try to make it as best as possible. So this is a better angle. This was the second piece from the series, and essentially what I tried to achieve that this corner perfectly match with this one. And so essentially you can see why I couldn't make this from one piece, because I have no wheels which would get into these tight areas. So you have a block and you have a cube. The reason why we as artists need the galleries, because as I mentioned previously, you need to have a chance to walk around the pieces, because from this angle you see obviously the red, yellow, and a little bit of blue. If you walk around the piece and you look from this direction, you're gonna get this view. This is the same piece. It's just optically it works very, very different. So I'm gonna go back. So here it's very quiet, and from here it's busy. This piece ended up in Seven Bridges Foundation, which is a museum in Greenwich, Connecticut. And they're on the mission to to collecting people of living artists. And I'll be truthful with you guys, I never heard of them. And it was very embarrassing because when I Google them and I click on the list of artists who they represent, the first three names which popped up were Delci Huli, Lino Taglipietra, and Libensky and Brichtova. So it was a privilege to find out that I am in such a good company. And yeah, it's all learning lesson for me. So this is a continuation of the hologram series, except here I decide to not use the dichroic glass, but I use a color. I actually figured out way that you can make two lamination in once, and instead having this kind of a random seam, I figured out the way that you can make it nice and straight. So that's what you see here. On this piece, I actually add half a sphere, which is laminated here, and I use light magenta epoxy, which you can see the reflection in the corner. This is just a quick snapshot from the studio, the work in the process, how I'm working on the Spectrum series. So I have two colors already laminated. You can see, so I have a blue, yellow. My next step was cut this corner diagonally this way, create kind of like a S shape. So here I add a red color, and this is the piece I make from that. All right, so this next image is a cascade. This is the first time when I actually use a white opal glass, which you cannot see on the image, but I will explain what I'm referring to. Until this point, I was always sandwiching the color between two pieces of clear. This yellow is much more pronounced and different because on the back, I used white glass, and white glass changed the intensity of the colors, but in certain cases, it changed how the optic works. And so on the next image, the white glass is on the bottom. It's laminated to the clear blocks using a yellow epoxy, and there is a blue lamination as well. So I have a blue, yellow, and white glass on the bottom. And this is the piece I make out of it. What's nice about it that with the white, that the glass is opaque, so it doesn't allow the color escape from the piece of glass. So the colors are much more pronounced. And this is the piece I just took myself on the studio when the piece was finished. Sometimes I do that. I just basically go as close to the glass as possible and take images what's optically happening in the glass. And sometimes I find something what I can use for my next project. This is essentially shape-wise the same thing what you just saw previously, but I didn't make it round and twisted, and I use 6 facets on each side, and it offsets the color on the inside. It just it's a very it's a different look. This is the continuation from the Spectrum series. You guys see, I do a lot of lenses, these round thing. I do lenses. I use lenses for 2 reasons. First of all, sometimes it helps me to kind of force people looking at the piece certain way, but it also offsets the color because, for example, here, the reflection of magenta, this whole side reflecting the color, and if I make the lens on that side, the lens will always appear clear. So it's a nice way to kind of, I like to add it. It just, lenses are something what I do enjoy making. This is a piece called Obelisk. This was one of the learning lessons. First piece I make was significantly smaller. Sometimes when I do something what I never done before, I do really like 2.5, 3 inches piece. And the first piece had the red on the bottom, but I used it with a clear glass. And so the color appeared here and almost no color was here. So I replaced on the final piece, I put the piece of white glass again on the bottom, and it's forcing all the red to project here. This is essentially made from 2 pieces. This gold half a circle is not on the outside. I usually, when I work with gold, it's on the outside. This actually, I cut a piece in half I airbrush the gold right here, and then I do the lamination, and basically this circle is non-existing, it's just the reflection. Now we're getting into the cones. This is one of my favorite images I have. This piece is done from 3 sections. There is a 3-side pyramid on the bottom, which I use yellow epoxy. There's a magenta and blue. The way I did cone, this is gonna be kind of hard to read, but I'm gonna try my best. As always, it starts as a block. So I had a block of glass, which I cut diagonally from corner to corner and laminated with a blue epoxy. This cannot be done with at once. So I was waiting several days when the blue cured, then I flip it 90 degrees and I attached a glass disc using a magenta epoxy. Then I'm gonna go to the diamond saw and I basically cut here about 30% of the material, and I'm gonna cut 4-side pyramid. So this is how it looks after I cut it, and then I grind it on the diamond wheel. So I have 4 sides. My next step was I got rid of these sharp edges, so I make a 4 facets on each corner, and then I started turning the whole piece until it got this shape. This is still on the roughest wheel. I brought this to the point, and then I repeat the same process on the 5 different wheels, and I brought it all the way to polish. When it was standing like that, to me, it was just the object. It was a cone. I felt it needs something else. So I flip it upside down, and I laminate a 3-side pyramid on the bottom. And again, that's the result. It was this image. Yes.
Wow. Oh, go ahead. Talk about that image, but then I have a question. Yeah, the next image where
The
this
next image.
Yeah.
Yeah, this it was used for on the poster for a Philadelphia museum show, and I also saw it on the billboard in the center. So this was about 25 feet tall. I wish I can make my pieces this big, but that will never happen. So.
Well, you deserve to have that poster up there. We have a comment that you deserve to be among the masters because you're a sculptor, so that each view as you move around brings new interest. And also, someone else, Nancy, is saying absolutely magnificent, that you are a genius. And everyone should own your work. But I have a question. So in that cone, you didn't plan that out. You were going kind of by instinct and experience as you worked with that?
In terms of in the way I work, I have 80% is set. I always do, I wouldn't call them drawing, I do sketches. If I'm not sure what I'm doing, I do little prototypes, but I do give myself about a 20% window of like for changes. Like when I was saying here, this was done, I knew that that piece gonna need something, but I needed to, see it 3D and a chance to walk around it. I knew that I'm gonna add something to the bottom to make it lean a certain way. There were a couple of different approaches, but I wasn't sure. And that's basically throughout the process. These pieces I'm making, they literally takes, weeks. So it gives me plenty of time to think about it. I don't want people to think that I can do this in one day. No, it's really usually like a week and a half, 2 weeks, depending on the design.
And how much would that piece weigh?
This one is, I know that measurements of this piece is 8 inches by about 9.5 on 10. So this one would be, I'm gonna say about maybe 22, 24 pounds, wow, something in that nature.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was saying that, even though I like making cones, my heart is bleeding because there's so much waste, a lot of cutoffs. And this is basically what's happening when you're cutting away a material. I have buckets full of glass, and I have shelves full of glass, and I have tables full of glass. And I am still waiting for that day when I'm gonna have that I don't know, quote unquote, genius idea to, oh, this is what I can use it for. I mean, you can see that a lot of pieces have already color in it, and I just don't have a heart to throw it away. So this is essentially how my studio look like, and hopefully one day I will use it for something else. So since I'm showing a mess, let's continue the theme. This is the most important wall in my studio. I am a very visual person, so things I want to remember, I always stick to the wall. So I have different colors I am mixing. I have a list of suppliers when I'm getting my wheels, when I'm buying a grid, my teaching schedule, my sketches. And, you know, my work is extremely messy. When I work, I'm wearing an apron, which you can see. I'm wearing glasses and rubber boots. And the problem is people know the final work, the final stage, that everything is polished and shiny. So when they come to the studio, they're expecting almost hospital environment, which is certainly not the case. This is my entrance door. I use this as a wall of task for the specific day or the week. So every time I have something to make, I always put it on the wall. When the project is done, I peel it off and replace it with something else. So that day I have an assemblage tower, which I was referring to this piece. Now we're getting into the stage more recent work when I'm trying to figure it out way how I can make pieces bigger, because the client's asking about it more and more. I am limited with what I can fit on my wheels and also what I can lift. So these are 3 individual pieces which I laminate together, and then I grind them all at once. I think this was 12 or 14 inches tall. This is from the last summer when I experimenting with something completely different, that instead of putting 3 or 4 pieces together and then grinding them as a one piece, I try to finish pieces individually and do the lamination as a last thing. So this is actually like a definition what you need in the cold shop. This box is full of Sharpies. I have a ruler, I have mask, pieces in process, and you need this. You need lots of Band-Aids, very important. So I took these 3 pieces, I polished them completely, and then I assembled them and make, this is probably the tallest I think I make, and it's tallest because like I said, I did them individually. I wasn't forced to pick up this at once and polish it. So it was about 19 or 20 inches, if I remember correctly. This is a different view. And yeah, this is a similar, like this piece I call Ibiza. I like the fact that the color is only on the bottom. There's one lens which I filled with the gold, and it just reflects multiple times. And you can see that one strip of color reflects throughout the entire piece. Now we're getting into my largest cone, which I ever make. This is this is the most current work. This piece, actually, it is on the display at Duncan Gallery at the moment. So I used the red and yellow, except I did not put a 3-side pyramid. This piece is about 14, 15 inches tall. I did not use the pyramid because the weight of the glass, it will be kind of harsh on that point. So there is a sphere here. And also I add a gold point to it. This is an alternative view of the same piece. This is my experimenting with the gold, which is in this point, sandwich inside of the glass. I actually cut the cube and then I airbrush it, and it gives me like so much more reflection than rather just being on the surface. So there's a gold on the bottom and gold inside of the piece, and it creates this staircase looking. So this is what I would call the standard version of my cone, 8 by 9.5, 8 by 10, also available at Duncan McLellan Gallery. This piece, I use more metallic colors because I do have a gold, I have silver, I have copper, I have bronze. So here I choose magenta on the bottom, gold is in the center, and the top is a copper. This is an image of my largest piece I made, and it's gonna stay that way. I will never ever try to accomplish something bigger. I try to cut this under the angle. I have 2 cuts, and you can see that right, this piece, I couldn't even, I have a 14-inch blade and it wasn't big enough, then I was able to cut this area here. So essentially I cut it as close as I could, and I took a rubber mallet and hit it, and I was just hoping that that cut's gonna continue and crack where I want it. So that actually happened to be the case. This piece, when it was finished, it was 72 pounds. And this is the piece. And again, this took me 5 weeks to finish, and I will have it on my resume for the rest of my life. But again, I will never ever try to go like that because my body cannot handle it. This is a side view.
And
And
Pavel, for the gold on that last piece, you cut the lenses and then you put powdered gold in there?
No, it's essentially like in this case, there are 4 layers of gold leaf. I basically make the lenses. There's one on the bottom, and then in the strip, and then there's a special epoxy you can attach. And when the gold is finished, then I put a shellac over it, which essentially make it waterproof. So if for whatever reason this, I would hate to see my pieces submerged, but let's say if you would clean it, you can go over it without making any damage. Now, you know, I keep talking about the lenses, but I actually never show how I make. So this piece is in Duncan Gallery as well, and I kept the track about. I basically kept images how I create my lenses. So I am using a spherical diamond wheels. I have about 4 different size, different profiles. So to finish the lens, I need 5 of these wheels. So my first stage, it's take the diamond wheel. These are all the different, this is a fine pumice, rough pumice, pre-polished, cerium oxide. You can see I have a diamond wheels like everywhere hanging because like I said, it's not just the size, I need different profiles. This is the machine. You know, there is nothing high-tech in the studio. I am using the cold working is, you know, technique done for a couple centuries. So no computers, it's just the wheel on the shaft. I actually will take this wheel, you see, which is an 8-inch wheel, and I will lay it flat on the piece and I will trace it because the wheel gives me the exact curvature of my lens. So when I have this, I will go on the diamond wheel and I make the cuts from 3 different directions and try to remove as much material as I can. After this, I'm gonna use that wheel I just showed you and I will try to smooth this. And I also did little lenses on the side. So this is the front view and this is the side view. So I am basically following what I draw on the glass. I know that people ask like, what happened if I go over? I can honestly tell you that never happens because this takes hours. So I don't want you to think that. So I think I have quite a bit of control. So after that, I will take a finer diamond wheel. I will basically resurface it. And then I use this middle one for pre-polish, which gives me kind of this kind of velvet finish. You can start to see that there's a triangle on the back and I have a colors on the side. So now when it's starting to get a little shinier, and this is the point after I use my medium pumice. So this piece is almost done. And that's the time when I'm focusing on the outside. When I'm using a finer grade 400, 600, the texture is so similar that what I do, I always mark it when the side is done. That's what fin stands for, a finish. So that's where all the marker is. So after this, I go on the 2 polishing wheels and I will turn this into that. That's the finished piece. And I believe I have a side view of that as well. Yeah, I choose to use this to fill it with the gold because the lenses here will reflect on the inside. You can actually see them, that this quarter circle will create the dome, which later on, if you look into that window, you can see. And yeah, this is my last one from the Tesseract series, which is currently in the St. Petersburg as well. I think this one is the best one to the date, personally. This is my grinding wheel. It's a 30-inch diameter. There's a chef in the center, so essentially my workspace is here. So that's basically why it cannot fit anything bigger than 14, 15 inches. So the grit, as a water feed, the grit comes here, and when this is spinning, that's where all the grinding happens. I tried to do a little different cone. So the wheel I just showed you gives me this texture, kind of rough. And so after this, I go on the finer wheel, and this is my polishing wheel, which is a polyurethane wheel with the pumice. The system is the same as the pumice mixed with the water. It's dripping right here. And that piece I just showed you, I polished, and this is the final. So it's a cone with the facets. In the Czech Republic, actually, they do have a machine which I would measure the diameter of the bottom, which was around 8 inches, and the machine would told me what the measurements of individual facet would be. I would basically just say, I want 18 facets, and I don't have that machine. So this was done essentially freehand. I just eyeball it. I start with the 4-side pyramid, then I did 8, and then I did 16. So this was quite challenging. And I forgot to mention, we're getting to the end of the show. These pieces, you guys, are the very first one which you sing, because I finished this like a couple of weeks ago. I have in the studio, I have, I believe, 2 or 3 more pieces which will show, and nobody else had a chance to see it. So this is something different. I try to experiment how many colors I can put in the one piece. The interesting part about this one, that when you look from the side or the back, you're gonna see only 2 colors mostly, and all the color only appear when you look to the lens. So I essentially cut and grind the bevels, and then I replace them with the white glass, and every bevel is laminated with a different epoxy. So I actually took my time here, and I make I need to deactivate this. I make a very short video. I apologize for the quality, because this is not what I do for a living, but to give you an idea how the optic works. So again, you see 2 pieces only around the edges. And then when we get to the lens, it's just gonna appear right there. So again, this is why the galleries are very, very important, because from the images you cannot see this. So that's one of the pieces I play. Honestly, I would, if it wouldn't be for a quarantine, I would never go for a pieces like that, because I just wouldn't have enough time if this would be a regular year. But because this took me more than a month to do. My next piece is this one. And I never worked with a solid. So throughout the slideshow you guys saw, then I always cut only fragment. Either I cut the bevel, or I cut just the side of the piece. This is the first piece I played that I replaced the whole side with the solid color. So I took my opal glass and I laminate this with the yellow epoxy. This side has a white with the blue and red on the bottom. Then I sandblast. This is again about 3 millimeters deep, this square, which now probably doesn't make sense why it's there, but I will explain it. So when you look from the side, you only gonna see the color which reflects on the opposite. What I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to people lined up the cube with their eyesight. So if you're gonna be if you lined up this corner with the corner in the back, you're gonna get this view, which is essentially cube inside of the cube. And this is my last video, which I'm gonna do. I don't know if that first piece needed okay, I'm struggling here to switch here. All right, so here we go. So yeah, when you look from the side, there's the color. This is the moment, if you lined up, that the cube, it will appear. And then when you walk around, the cube will disappear completely. And there is just the hollow space. To prove you that this is still, after I'm doing this, if I count my student years, over 30 years, this is a learning process to me too, because I realized I tried on my little prototype, make the lens here, like I always do. But to my big surprise, when I make the lens, the cube completely disappear. So, this is my very last piece, which I just finished. This almost looked like a 3D print. This is the only image I never touch in the Photoshop. This is how it looks. It almost doesn't look real. So I replaced my bevels with 6 black pieces of glass down the outside, and then I add gold on the 3 remaining side. And I call this piece Infinity. And yeah, this one I have for literally a couple of days. So I will finish this presentation with this image, which is from January 23rd, 2012. And that's the year when I become a US citizen. And so I take this as my new birth certificate, which makes me 9 years old. I'm very happy about that. Now, this was a very special day in my career. It was always on the list, something what I want to do. And I try to keep things into perspective and being well aware of the fact that I truly believe that this is the only country where I can do what I'm doing for a living as a full-time job. So I'm going to end it up with that. And thank you so much for sticking with me. And I'm glad I was able to make it under an hour.
Thank you, Pavel. We're so happy that you're here, I have to say. And we do have one final comment. So many people commenting about how talented you are and how beautiful your work is. Bill asks, after all your experience, are you still ever surprised by the optical effects in your finished pieces?
Definitely, definitely. I think I wouldn't be honest if I would say that after all this time, I understand all the reflection, because if you look inside, I will zoom on this one, this glass really creates that infinite effect. It just like goes and goes. And so it is still learning process. And I actually came up with a new design almost by accident when I finished the piece, and I flipped it 90 degrees when I was putting my signature on it. And I saw completely different reflection, which I did not expect. So yes, I'm still, even after all these years, I am able to find the little surprises and little windows, and it's a work in progress.
Thank you. And we do have a question about whether or not you're making any jewelry. I think you said you were not doing that now, but
not currently, but I'm not trying to brag, but I do have a lot of phone calls about that because, like I said, I was doing it for 4.5 years, and the client, it was a good number of clients, and so it's just a question of time before I will come back to it. Right now, I am not actively making it, but
he hasn't mentioned it. He hasn't mentioned it, but his wife is a wonderful jewelry artist in her own.
My wife, Deborah Adelson, yes. Hello, Arthur, how are you?
Thank you for mentioning
So my
that.
wife is an artist too. We decided to go through our life the easy way, which is basically making art, and which allows us for absolutely zero financial planning, and it's just fun. No, I have to say that I have to knock on wood. The glass was very good to me, and you know, I hope that I'll be able to continue this through the, the rest of my life. I have 30 plus years into it. So if I can do next 20, I'll be very fortunate and very happy about it.
Duncan, this was a treat. Thank you for bringing us Pavel.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
bringing
Thank
us,
you.
Arthur, bringing us Pavel. I really appreciate you bringing us some images and telling us about him. And so we're very proud to be showing his work. Thanks, Arthur.
Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur, and thank you, Pavel, and everyone that is here today. We're so excited to have Pavel's work in the gallery. If you haven't been able to come in and see it, please do. And as Irene offered, you can also have a virtual tour of the work. Email Irene at dmglass.com, but we hope you'll get to come into the gallery really soon and see this amazing work. Our next program is with the AACG, and the Duncan McClellan Gallery is sponsoring a visit by the Ferro Brothers from Murano, Italy on April 20th. It will be in their All Fired Up series, so please look into that. We'll make an announcement about that as well. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody. But before we go, does anyone have final comments for Pavel? I think everyone is speechless. So
probably yes.
Thank
Thank you so much
much
for having me. Thank you. I'm glad that you guys stick around to the complete end, and thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great weekend, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you really soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.